All right, Joel, say good morning. Good morning. Let's begin. We're picking up in Eretz Hashem in Parak Aleph of Oros HaTeshuva, same PDF that I sent out on the chat just 2 days ago. So we left off in the middle of page 10. So if you remember again, one of the incredible things that happened in yesterday's shir is that Rav Kook was able to give us the different categorical designations of tshuva. And specifically, we're focusing on the first category, which is called tshuva tivis, instinctive or innate tshuva. Rav Kook then went on to explain that in this category of tshuva tivis, there's two subcategories of tshuva tivis gufanis and tshuva tivis nafshis. There's what we'll call instinctive physical tshuva and ultimately instinctive spiritual tshuva. What's in store again? Then we're focusing what's instinctive physical tshuva. So Rav Kook explained that sin causes discomfort. Sin causes discomfort. Sin causes, what Rav Kook said, illness. Sin causes literally physical difficulty. So what happens when a person is in a state of physical discomfort? What occurs? They're going to try to remedy it. That's the nature of the human condition. I just want to, if I'm uncomfortable, I want to be able to change that at some point. So therefore, Rav Kook says the process of tshuva, tivis gufnis, is because sin creates a sense of physical discomfort, I'm going to want to address that. I'm going to want to alleviate that in some way. So we're picking up now on page 10, the middle of the page, about 4 lines down from the top. Hamedicina, medicine. Medicine, osekes bazeh amnam harbe. So what's medicine, right? What is the entire discipline of medicine? Someone has an ailment, and what's the goal? The goal is fix it. The goal is address it. In other words, they'll say, no one ever comes to their doctor and say, I think people don't come to the doctor and say, this is bothering me, and the doctor says, you know what? There are people with bigger problems than that. Don't worry, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Whereas obviously, are there incurable things, as we'll discuss? There are. But l'maisa, the whole avoda of medicine is to be able to cure illness. There's a problem. What can we do to address that particular problem? He goes on, he says, but here's what's incredible. In the same way that medicine is unable to address everything. And I will say, here's the interesting thing about medicine. Right? A person could be ill, and sometimes you could address an illness, maybe even cure an illness. But interestingly enough, can you restore a person to what they were before the illness? And this depends. Right? Certain, even major illnesses, Baruch Hashem, with advances in modern medicine, we can cure, we can treat. So you're no longer sick, but doesn't necessarily mean that you are what you were before. And this is an interesting idea. So Rav Kook says, V'lo nimtza adayin ha'pitaron ha'nachon l'chol ha'shelos ha'tshuva gufanis. Rav Kook says, so in this first model of tshuva, sin, Rav Kook posits, literally creates physical discomfort, literally creates physical difficulties. When I'm in a state of physical difficulty, what am I going to do? I'm going to address it. I don't want to be like this. So therefore, if sin causes physical difficulty, sin causes, Rav Kook posits, even illness, then of course I'm going to want to do tshuva. And this is not motivated out of any lofty spiritual ideal. What is it motivated out of? Comfort, care, personal care. Same way if it's too hot, I'm going to turn on the air conditioning, too cold, I'm going to turn on the heat. Not because of some lofty theological idea, but because I want to be in a state of comfort. On the most basic human level of tshuva, sin causes discomfort. Tshuva is the process through which I restore my comfort equilibrium. In the same way that modern medicine can't cure every physical ailment, Rav Kook says the one unknown is, can tshuva cure every physical ailment? Could tshuva address every element or every aspect of discomfort? He goes on, he says, similar in modern medicine, we haven't found the answer to every single thing. We also don't know in tshuva, what's the scope of tshuva? What's the full power of tshuva? What's the full measure of tshuva? So these answers we don't have. Ad kamo sheyish b'gvulos hachai b'hachzir la'adam es kol ha'avud mimenu mitzad hachatoim meharsi haguf v'kochosav. They both say this is a very profound line. Rav Kook says the one thing we don't know, and this goes back to the introduction, which is Rav Kook says, as much as has been written about tshuva, and as much as we understand about tshuva, there is so much we don't understand about tshuva. So one of the things that Rav Kook is saying is, tshuva has the ability to restore physical equilibrium. It has that power. What we don't know is to what extent. To what extent? And I will say, to me, this is a very profound line, because really what Rav Kook is saying is, one of the great unknowns about tshuva is, in general, how much could tshuva restore you to where you were prior to the sin? You know, I'll tell you something interesting. A lot of times, like with end-of-life issues, in halacha, right? So the big things that often come up is, let's say a person, Rahman al-Islam, is dying, some type of terminal condition. And often the shilas come up like, how much intervention should you do for a person who is clear as, is towards the end of their journey? How much do you have to do? And again, because often medical intervention comes with its own negative consequences also. So how much do you have to do? And one of the interesting shilas that a rav or a posek has to ask a doctor is, if you go ahead and you do this process, you do this medical intervention, can you restore a person back to their baseline? To what they were before this last, so to speak, medical hiccup. Can you restore them to their baseline? Rav Kook says, one of the mysteries of tshuva is, can I be restored to my baseline? So does tshuva take me back somehow to where I was before the sin? Can tshuva really transport me back to who I once was? Or is it that tshuva erases sin, tshuva is powerful like that, but I can't be restored to that baseline? In other words, I'm someone different going forward. And Rav Kook says this is one of the great mysteries of tshuva. And it's fascinating because it's the same mystery for medical healing, right? So medicine knows a person has an illness, we could go ahead, let's say we know with certainty we could cure this illness. What's the one thing you don't know? What's the person going to be like after the cure has been administered? Who are they going to be? Right? Are they going to have all their same abilities? Are they going to be the same person? Are they going to be the same, right? Are they going to have the same energy? It's fascinating. So Rav Kook says the same thing, the same unknown in the world of medical healing is the same unknown, says Rav Kook, in tshuva. I know the cure will work. Who will I be after the fact? Will I have that baseline? Is it going back to what was? Or is it going to something new? Rav Kook says this is the great unknown. He goes on, he says, Ad kamo. He says, K'fi ha'nira miktzah shel tshuva, zu taloihu, b'kesher chazak, b'yeser chalkei tshuva ruchanis. So Rav Kook says, let's understand. What we've started out with over here is the most basic level of tshuva. This tshuva, tivis gufnis, instinctive, inherent physical tshuva. Rav Kook says, but this tshuva can't stand alone. This tshuva has to be tied in to the other spiritual forms of tshuva, namely, right, hativis, ha'emunis, v'hasichlis. Ultimately, again, as we're going to see, there's another level of physical instinctive tshuva, which is spiritual instinctive tshuva, ultimately tshuva based on emunah, and intellectual tshuva. So all Rav Kook is saying is this is an incredible place to start. But ultimately, again, not a place where we could end. So we'll say, essentially, this first model of tshuva, it's not even model, but this first unit of tshuva is, for lack of a better term, almost like what we would term a utilitarian tshuva, right? Because this tshuva says, I'm in discomfort. What do most of us do? What do most people do when they're in a state of discomfort? What do you do? You alleviate your discomfort. That's what you do. Tshuva causes me discomfort. In this model of Kook is saying physical discomfort. Therefore, the first model of tshuva is I'm going to engage in a process of tshuva. And again, I'll say, the one thing we're not discussing, or Cook is not discussing over here, is what is that tshuva? Like what exactly does that process even look like? So Rav Kook's not even discussing that over here, right? He's just outlining kind of like the theological construct of it. So I know that it'll alleviate my physical discomfort. I know that. And again, all of this based on the idea that Rav Kook feels that tshuva does produce negative physical results. Again, I want to go ahead and repeat the disclaimer from yesterday. Rav Kook is saying that sin causes illness. He's not saying that all illness is the result of sin. And this is a very important theological idea, because otherwise we get into a very detrimental and erroneous theological place where we assume that every single bad thing that happens to a person is because of some avera. That is not a true statement. But yet Rav Kook says it, but it is true to say that sin itself absolutely causes physical distress. Tshuva could alleviate that. I run to the first level of tshuva because I want to alleviate my physical distress. The great unknown is I can take away the illness. I can take away the physical difficulties. What will it restore me to? The same way that medicine doesn't know what the cure will restore you to, one of the great unknowns of tshuva, can I ever become the person I was? Can I reclaim that? Can I reclaim that past identity? Or maybe that's not the avoda. Maybe the avoda is to let go of that past identity and Emeretz Hashem, move on to someone new. We'll also stop here for today, Emeretz Hashem. We'll pick up on let me get a little bit on Sunday, Emeretz Hashem. We'll pick up next week, Emeretz Hashem, on the next category, which is tshuva tivis nafshis. Inherent or innate spiritual tshuva.